In an attempt to escape from the current events in the United States and the world's relentless, emotional, physical, and mental draining, I recently did what I always tend to do in these situations. Watch a bunch of old SpongeBob episodes. Specifically seasons 1 through 3 to be a little bit more specific. While escapism can be a slippery slope leading me further and further into detaching from real-world problems and situations that I have little to no control over, I find rewatching old SpongeBob episodes provides me with a comforting, predictable, and nostalgic experience that contrasts with the extreme complexities of current-day life. At least it does for a short while, until I can emotionally, physically, and mentally regroup. During my most rewatch and binge, I watched an iconic episode that I've seen countless times. However, due to my current adult perspective, it struck a different chord than it did when I originally watched in 2001. Fuck, I'm getting old. Fuck. Online, I've seen many people interpret this episode as a portrayal of depression, existentialism, nihilism, and the balance between happiness and sadness. While I find a lot of good and valid interpretations in these analyses, I haven't really heard many people discuss it from the unique perspective that it struck me during my latest rewatch. So in an attempt that would likely annoy Susan Sontag, I'm going to analyze and interpret SpongeBob's 2001 episode, Squidville. Part 1, The Squidly Pursuit of Happiness.
Thanks for the tip.
For those who don't constantly rewatch SpongeBob episodes as a form of escapism to relieve yourself from the perpetual crushing pressure and anxiety of this polarized, divided, dying, and depressing place we call an Earth, a quick recap is probably in order. Squidville opens with SpongeBob and Patrick receiving new reef blowers and causing havoc. In an attempt to improve Squidward's house, they accidentally destroy it. Furious, Squidward declares that this was the last straw and that he's moving far away to escape from having SpongeBob and Patrick as his neighbors. I love how the writers Aaron Springer, C.H. Greenblatt, and Meriwether Williams crafted Squidward's monologue in the scene. It's perfectly long-winded, pompous, expressive, and hilarious that are all wrapped up into something only Squidward could deliver so perfectly. Just as he considers leaving, a commercial for 𝙤𝙀 Acres airs, comically repeating word for word what Squidward just said to SpongeBob and Patrick.
Walk out into the middle of the nearest four-way intersection and skip rope with it, then continue living where you do now, then move to...
I hate this channel.
God bless these writers, man, I swear. Arriving at 𝙤𝙀 Acres, Squidward is thrilled to find neighbors just like himself, with identical houses and similar interests. Before he can go to sleep, eager to start his new life, SpongeBob and Patrick call trying to get him to come back. Squidward refuses, saying that there's no way he's giving up the chance to be among his own kind. He spends his days in routine activities like biking, shopping, interpretive dance, and playing his clarinet, fully embracing his new life. However, as time passes, the uniformity of each day drains him, and he begins to feel trapped in a monotonous loop. Eventually, he realizes that paradise has lost its charm. While wandering in numbness, Squidward spots an unattended reef blower that reminds him of SpongeBob. He begins to play with it, disturbing the residents who quickly form an angry mob to chase him out. Okay, has anyone else noticed how quickly the people at the Bikini Bottom are quick to riot and form a mob?
Sometimes you gotta pop out and show niggas. Certified boogeyman, I'm the one that up the score with them.
Meanwhile, SpongeBob and Patrick arrive at 𝙤𝙀 Acres to apologize to Squidward. Thanks to Patrick's bad fried oyster skin breath, they accidentally knock out the doorman, opening the gate and entering the village. As SpongeBob and Patrick search for Squidward, he is cornered and desperate to escape from the angry mob. He ends up using the reef blower to launch himself out of 𝙤𝙀 Acres, yelling freedom as he flies away. SpongeBob and Patrick see him zooming through the sky, but confused by the chaos, decide that couldn't possibly be the Squidward they know, ending the episode. So when people talk about this episode online, they often mention the scene of Squidward repeating his routine and passage of time. The simple yet effective visualization of happiness draining from Squidward is effortlessly applicable to a perspective on depression. And I used to view it through that lens as well, until I read this book. Now I see this specific scene not as depression, but as something different, something innately human and personally resonant. Adaptation and Miswanting. Part 2, The Miswant Paradise of Humans, or Squid in this scenario. William B. Irvin is a professor of philosophy at Wright State University in Ohio. In 2006, he sat down and wrote a book on desire with the creative title On Desire. That's it? In the book, Professor Irwin takes readers on a broad tour of desire and wants, examining where these impulses come from and how we can rein them in. He incorporates insight from ancient and modern writers, philosophers, and religious rhetoric to provide a well-rounded and detailed exploration of desire. While desire is a nuanced subject, we all understand its basic and how these desires shape our lives and actions. Desires usually fall into one of two categories: instrumental desires and terminal desires. Instrumental desires are those we pursue for the sake of something else, while terminal desires are those we seek for their own sake. Though the world of SpongeBob is a cartoon and doesn't reflect our reality, the way desires operate carries over. SpongeBob desires to cook Krabby Patties, do a good job, and have fun. Mr. Krabs desires to increase his capital to boost his income as much as possible while spending little to nothing. Plankton desires to steal the Krabby Patty formula to put Mr. Krabs out of business. Sandy Cheeks studies science and conducts experiments to deepen her knowledge in her field of work, while Patrick simply wants to eat.
Oh boy, 3 a.m.
Squidward, on the other hand, has more complicated desires. So trying to distill Squidward's primarily wants aligns more closely with instrumental desires. Squidward often engages in his interests as a means of seeking validation, notoriety, fame, or a form of elitism.
Well, it's true.
It's fair to say Squidward believes he will be happy if he achieves his desire for validation, fame, and perhaps even having all the museums of the world with a wing named after him.
There will be a wing with my name on it in all the museums of the world!
Dude, you're teaching art at the rec center. Calm down.
Getting back to the Squidville episode, we find Squidward emotionally and mentally defeated after SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally destroy his house. That being the final straw brings out his desire to live far away from them and be surrounded by like-minded, artistically cultured neighbors. After moving to Tentacle Acres, Squidward settles into a routine that initially feels cathartic, as he finally found a community that shares his interests. Tentacle Acres is portrayed as a tight-knit community where everyone does the same thing, shares the same interests, and coexists in harmony. From riding bicycles and interpretive dancing to playing clarinet at night, and who could forget the canned bread in their grocery stores. This community seems well balanced and in perfect symbiosis. And that's what starts to get to Squidward. In my most recent watch, I didn't see the scene as depression necessarily, but rather as adaptation. And from a loss of self-individuality due to being encompassed by a homogeneous community, but that's a discussion for another day. Adaptation is a psychological phenomenon where we tend to get used to what we have, therefore liking it less over time. Miswanting, on the other hand, describes the tendency to desire things that don't actually make us happy in the long run. We slowly grow indifferent to a home, a partner, a new pair of shoes, or the newest iPhone that Apple is shoving down our throats. That were all once a source of pride and joy that we are no longer satisfied with, leading us to form new desires in order to try to satisfy them, starting the cycle over. The terms miswanting and adaptation are contemporary, but people have understood for thousands of years what these phenomena are as a major root of dissatisfaction in humans, or Squid in this case. In the montage of Squidward's daily routine, we don't see anything that would obviously cause a negative feeling if experienced in isolation. These activities could actually be considered ideal for a bunch of people. Morning bike rides, shopping at a local grocery store, taking group Zumba classes, and sharing experiences with others who have similar hobbies or interests as you. But this montage doesn't depict an isolated day. It's strongly implied that we're seeing Squidward's routine repeated over possible days, weeks, or even months, long enough for adaptation and miswanting to set in, likely leaving life feeling stagnant and Tentacle Acres' appeal dissipating. Thanks to miswanting and adaptation, most people spend their lives on what economic psychologist Daniel Kahneman calls a satisfaction treadmill. After the montage, we see Squidward in a melancholic and bored state, lamenting that this place is Squidward's paradise. But then he clarifies himself that maybe it's too much paradise. In my interpretation, this is when miswanting finally sets in for Squidward. He has achieved what he has always wanted, or thought he wanted. Like Squidward, we often strive for a concept of constant happiness, thinking it will fulfill us and make everything perfect in our lives. If and when we gain this happiness or the object of our desire, we get used to it, slowly adapting and becoming complacent, which leads us to form new desires in pursuit of this constant state of happiness. This leaves us possibly in the same predicament as Squidward, constantly on what Israeli-American psychologist Daniel Kahneman calls a satisfaction treadmill. But the thing about treadmills are that we can get off them. Part 3. Get off the treadmill. In the past year and a half, I've become aware of and I've been taking steps to understand my own habit of adaptation and miswanting. Ever since I was a young little dually running around, reading comics and memorizing SpongeBob scenes that would be completely useless to an adult version of myself, I've had a tendency to start off strong and then slowly lose interest until I move on to the next pursuit, starting the whole entire cycle over again. While I do have enduring passions that have stayed with me through the different stages of my life, the pattern of miswanting and adaptation has followed me. It's something that I've only recently become consciously aware of and noticed it affecting past relationships, hobbies, desires, and happiness in my life. As humans, we work incredibly hard to fulfill the desire we believe will bring us satisfaction and lasting happiness. But when we finally get what we want, we often discover, thanks to miswanting, that we don't truly want it, resulting in only momentary satisfaction at best. In those cases, when we do get what we want and find it desirable, its appeal fades over time as we adapt to its presence in our lives. Eventually, our old feelings of dissatisfaction resurface. So, like Squidward, I'm on a satisfaction treadmill. And if you find yourself on it as well, what can we do about it? How can we enjoy a degree of tranquility that is impossible as long as we are running to satisfy the next desire in what will turn out to be a never-ending series of desires? We can begin to take steps to avoid miswanting. That's obviously easier said than done, but it can be achieved by studying and understanding how we form our desires, as well as by learning to distinguish things that are truly desirable, like family, self-respect, and community. While the dread of an everyday routine slowly draining the life out of you affects most people similarly to Squidward, who dwells in adaptation and miswanting, we have the choice to circumvent it. We can get off the treadmill. While SpongeBob is a comedic show with a status quo where things always reset at the end of each episode, it was inevitable that Squidward wouldn't stay in Tentacle Acres forever. The comedic writers obviously needed a funny way to place Squidward back in the status quo of being SpongeBob and Patrick's neighbor. But who knows, maybe you have a reef blower you can use to escape the stagnant routine of your life. While Squidward's life and experiences are dictated by a room of comedy writers, our lives are not. Or maybe they are. I don't know. That's a pretty scary thought. Oh. Squidward could have taken active steps to break his adaptation by changing up his routine, finding other communities to participate in, and actively striving to continue wanting what he is fortunate to have. This obviously goes for us as well as we find ourselves in certain situations. So look, I'm not saying we shouldn't strive for better things in our lives if we find ourselves in situations that are undesirable or a detriment to our life. But instead of forever chasing the next horizon or desire, we can look at our family, partners, friends, objects, and communities that we are fortunate to have and do the work to actively and consciously strive to keep wanting the things we already have. If they make us happy and we love them, we have to put the work in. With social media apps like Instagram and TikTok being cesspools of illusionary content ripe for miswanting, turning away or developing healthier habits with social media is an important step to dealing with the illusions of miswanting in our lives. I should clarify that this should be considered a practice and not something to try to necessarily perfect. When it comes to Squidville, my current rewatch gave me such a new perspective that really resonated with me and the human condition. I'm in a constant state of practice and evolution, but I'm at least aware of this now, and I can take steps to get off this satisfaction treadmill. Adaptation is listless and draining. Miswanting is ceaseless and misleading. But love and happiness that can be found in the people and communities around us, objects, hobbies, and passions that we hold dear to us, those are fulfilling. Those are transcendental. And those are active. Looks like the sun finally wanted to come out and shine on us today. I think I've been shooting for like 2 hours. It's been a cloudy day, and now the sun wants to come out and show itself. That's funny. That's good. Like, God has a sense of humor. That's good. I want to say that's it for me today on Squidville and adaptation and miswanting. And I feel like I'm going to be rewatching a lot of SpongeBob these next few years, let's say. And I may make another SpongeBob related video in the future, so subscribe and keep a lookout for that if that's what you're into. And let me know how you interpret the Squidward scene down below in the comments. My links are in the description: Letterboxd, Instagram, Spotify, etc. Do with that what you will. Like, comment, and subscribe if that's your kind of stuff, and I'll see you next time.